Wow, you guys really sent us some stuff this week. Articles about lending money to friends and family.
Yeah.
Um, it's something I think we've all thought about at one point or another. And the sources you sent in really highlight the challenges involved.
Yeah, definitely a tricky situation to navigate. It's amazing how common this is, though. Almost a third of adults have helped loved ones financially. So it's clearly something that tons of people experience. And that's why it's so important for us to really figure out how to handle these situations. How can we offer support without putting ourselves in a bad spot, financially or even emotionally? What are the key things to consider? The do's and the don'ts.
Okay, so right off the bat, the articles you sent all start with this really basic but important question. When does it even make sense to lend money to a friend or family member? I mean, I guess these requests usually pop up when someone's going through a tough time. Maybe a sudden emergency expense, or they're struggling to build credit, or maybe they've had a setback like an illness or job loss.
Exactly. Those are the kinds of situations that make us want to step in and help right away. But the articles are really clear that before you even think about lending money, you have to honestly ask yourself, can I really afford this? Can I do it without putting my own finances at risk?
Yeah, it's not just about what you have in your bank account right now, is it? You got to look at your whole budget, your savings, and really think, what if that money is gone for a while, or even forever? I mean, I know one article really emphasized the importance of trust and the person's track record with money. Have they been responsible in the past? That seems like a pretty big deal, Raise.
Absolutely. Their past behavior can definitely give you some clues about what to expect. And as one article put it, you need to really take stock of your own financial picture, your regular expenses, your emergency fund, to really figure out what you're comfortable risking.
So we've talked about when it might be okay to lend. Now, what about the do's? Like, what should you do if you do decide to lend money? One thing that really stuck out to me was only lend to people you really truly trust. I mean, that seems kind of obvious, but why is it so important?
It goes beyond just getting your money back. You're creating this financial connection. And if it's with someone you don't fully trust, it can easily lead to resentment and anxiety. And it can really damage the relationship no matter what happens with the loan. That peace of mind, knowing you're dealing with someone who you believe is acting in good faith, is really invaluable.
That makes a lot of sense. And I noticed that one article even suggested considering collateral. Does that provide like extra security?
Yeah.
And maybe show that the borrower is serious about repaying?
It can, yeah. Collateral gives you something tangible, something concrete. It can demonstrate that they're committed, and it gives you a potential option if things go wrong. It just adds a layer of formality and can reduce some of the risk. And speaking of risk, the next do is really important. Only lend an amount that you could actually afford to lose. One of the articles had a really interesting way of putting it. Think of the money as a potential gift.
Yeah, that's really smart. If you go into it thinking this might be a gift, does that change how you should talk about the terms of the loan, or even whether you should expect updates on their situation?
That's a great question. That mindset shift is so important because it helps you set realistic expectations from the beginning. If you view it as a potential loss that won't derail your own finances, you won't lend more than you can handle. It protects you from needing to borrow money yourself later on. And yeah, it could affect how you communicate. Maybe you focus less on strict repayment deadlines and more on their overall well-being. But it's still crucial to be upfront about whether it's a loan or a gift to avoid any misunderstandings down the road.
Okay, so this next do feels really important. I think this is where a lot of loans go wrong, even with the best intentions. Get it in writing. Why is a formal agreement so important, even when you really trust the person? I mean, I get it, but asking family for a contract feels awkward. Is there a way to approach this without it being weird?
I get it. It can definitely feel awkward. But even when there's tons of trust, memories can be fuzzy. And misunderstandings happen. A written agreement makes everything clear and protects both people. It removes any doubt about the terms, and the articles are really clear about what should be included. The names of both people, the date of the loan, the exact amount, the minimum payment amount, how often they need to pay when the final payment is due, the interest rate if you're charging one, and what happens if they can't repay the loan. And if it's a larger amount of money, it's a really good idea to get a lawyer involved to make sure the contract is solid. As for approaching it delicately, you can frame as, hey, I just want to make sure we're both on the same page and avoid any confusion later on. It's about clarity, not distrust.
Yeah, that's a much better way to think about it. And what about charging interest? That's a really sensitive topic. So the IRS has some rules to make sure people aren't using loans to avoid gift taxes. And there's this thing called the applicable federal rate. Think of it like a minimum interest rate.
Right. The articles mention that if you decide to charge interest, you have to be careful about state laws that set limits on interest rates. And then there's the IRS and their applicable federal rate, or AFR. If you charge interest that's lower than the AFR, the IRS might consider the difference to be a gift and you could owe taxes on it. And as we mentioned earlier, for loans that are over $10,000, any interest you earn is usually taxable income. So it's definitely worth talking to a tax professional to make sure you're doing everything right.
And it's really important to be clear about whether it's a loan or a gift, right? The article mentioned that for 2024 and 2025, the annual gift tax exclusion is $18,000 and $19,000. So if you're giving less than that and you don't expect to be repaid, the IRS considers it a gift.
That's a key distinction. If you're genuinely giving money with no expectation of getting it back, and it's within those limits, the IRS sees it as a gift. But it's crucial to be upfront about whether it's a loan or a gift from the start. That way you avoid tax issues and manage expectations in the relationship.
Okay, so those are the do's. Now let's talk about the don'ts. And the first one is a repeat, but it's so important it's worth saying again. Don't lend more than you can afford to lose. Why do you think people make that mistake? Is it just because they want to be helpful, or is it something else? Like maybe they're afraid of hurting the relationship by saying no.
That's a really good question, and it's worth repeating because the consequences can be huge, not just for your finances, but for the relationship. If you end up resenting the person or stressed out because you lent them money, that's not good for anyone. And I think you're right. It's usually a mix of wanting to help and fear of causing problems by setting boundaries. People might feel obligated to lend or worry that saying no will hurt the relationship. It's tough emotionally.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in for sure. The next don't is something I think a lot of people struggle with. Don't let guilt drive your decision. It's so easy to feel pressured when someone you care about is going through a rough time.
Absolutely. Guilt is a powerful emotion. But you really have to step back and look at the situation as objectively as you can. If you're lending money out of guilt, you might start to resent the person, and it might not even be the best thing for them in the long run. The articles suggest thinking about other ways to support them, like helping them find resources, connecting them with people who can help, or offering practical assistance that doesn't involve giving them money. Sometimes giving money can actually prevent someone from finding a more sustainable solution.
That's a great point. Sometimes helping doesn't mean handing over cash. And the last don't here is pretty clear. Don't lend someone your credit. So that means no co-signing loans and no letting them use your credit cards. Can you talk about why those are risky?
When you co-sign or let someone use your credit card, you're basically tying your financial well-being to their actions. If you co-sign a loan and they stop making payments, you're on the hook for the whole thing. And that can really hurt your credit score even if you never even saw the money. If you let someone use your credit card, you're responsible for anything they charge. And it can be really hard to get things back under control if they overspend. These should really be last resorts. And you need to be completely aware of the potential downsides before you even consider it.
Okay, so we've covered the main do's and don'ts. And just to recap, when it comes to the legal and tax stuff about charging interest.
Right. So it's legal to charge interest on loans to family or friends. You got to check your state laws about interest rate limits. And the big thing is the IRS and their applicable federal rate, or AFR. If you charge interest below the AFR, they might see it as a gift, and you could end up owing taxes. And for loans over $10,000, any interest you earn is taxable income for you. And even forgiving part of the loan or charging a super low interest rate can have tax implications. So it's always smart to talk to a tax expert or a lawyer if you're thinking about charging interest, especially for larger loans.
It shows that even something that seems like a simple act of kindness can have some pretty serious legal and tax consequences that are easy to miss.
Absolutely. It's great to have good intentions, but it's also important to understand the rules and what could happen. You don't want to create problems for yourself or the person you're trying to help.
So as we wrap this up, it seems like the biggest challenge is finding that balance, wanting to help the people we care about, while also protecting ourselves financially and keeping those relationships strong. The articles mention that the emotional damage from a loan gone bad can be worse than the actual financial loss. And even though it might feel weird or too formal, writing things down and maybe even considering collateral can really help protect you if you do decide to lend money.
You got it. Lending money to loved ones is always complicated. The best way to handle it is to think about all the details, the specific people involved, your own financial situation, and how comfortable you are with the risks.
So as you're thinking about all this in your own life, Think about the potential impact on your relationship no matter what happens with the loan. And maybe the most important question to ask yourself is, what's truly going to be the most helpful thing in the long run? That's something we all need to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.